Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. This is our last episode of 2025. This episode's topic is going to be closing out 2025 and how cannabis operators can prepare for a compliant 2026. And before I dive in, I'll give you a little bit about my background. I got my start working in the cannabis industry in Colorado in 2009, running vertically integrated cannabis operations. And in 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, and I help cannabis operators navigate the regulatory landscape across the United States from licensing to launching a compliant cannabis operation. So I appreciate everyone tuning in today. This is a solo episode with just myself, and I thought what a great topic to discuss is preparing for the end of the year and what things can you work on cleaning up and how can you prepare for next year, which is literally just around the corner here. We're almost at Christmas and the holidays this week. So this is a really good time to do these cleanup practices and get your business organized. And also, too, for those who might not have had the chance to tune in, last week I actually had a wonderful CPA on, and she went over all the financial and future planning that you can work on your business relating to finances. So I highly recommend checking that episode out. It's got a lot of wonderful, helpful information in there for cannabis operators and preparing your business for next year financially. First, I'm going to start with winding down 2025. And a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, one, from my own personal experience of running and operating a regulated cannabis facility, cultivation, and dispensary, a vertically integrated operation. And these are things that I did at the end of every year with getting organized, especially around record keeping. And that is going to be the first area I'm going to dive into. And then also, too, I'm going to talk a little bit of how you can prepare for rescheduling. As we know, the process to begin rescheduling was announced on December 19th, 2025. So I'm just going to talk about very lightly some things that you can work on and then how to avoid a lot of the misinformation that's going on out there. And lastly, some great, wonderful things you can do to prepare for 2026 and with the rescheduling and potentially what's going to be going on with the hemp industry and if the hemp ban is going to happen. And there's a lot of crossover, I understand, in the industry. We have regulated cannabis businesses that cross over to hemp and vice versa. So I'll try to get some of that additional information in this episode. Winding down the correct way in 2025, I'm going to start with a record keeping cleanup. In every state in the United States, this podcast, I address the US market. And I would say 100% of regulated cannabis states, there are record keeping requirements on how you maintain records, how many years you have to hold on to them, and reporting requirements, as well as there's record keeping requirements when it comes to HIPAA compliance. If you are a medical cannabis facility, I would highly recommend following HIPAA, which is typically going to be longer than what the regulated cannabis framework will tell you to keep records for. And then financial records, anything around money, I always follow the IRS record keeping standards and to keep those records. And that way you're not disposing of any records and all of a sudden the IRS is like, where's this and that? As we know, the IRS does audit dispensaries, medical and retail. So you want to make sure you hold on to all those financial records. Work with your professional CPA or financial advisor or whoever's helping you on that end with any kind of financial record keeping. So one of the first things I like to talk about is you want to get all your 2025 records organized. We're down to less than 2 weeks before 2026 is going to be here. And if you're still doing, I'm going to talk about the cloud and then physical files. If you're still using a physical filing cabinet, which I know sounds very dinosaur-esque and ancient, but believe it or not, businesses still use filing cabinets and have physical files. So what you want to do is go through all those files and make sure anything for 2025 is pulled out and stored away, or at least physically separated, and that way you can easily see what's 2026 and what's going to be 2025. For things like compliance records, for example, transportation manifest, for those who are not keeping that digitally, I know you can go in to the seed to sale tracking system metric and those records will be in there. But for those people that are going above and beyond and actually have physical records, you want to make sure those manifests are separated between 2025 and 2026. Nowadays, there's a lot of digital record keeping, and some states allow it, some states do not. So you want to make sure you are in alignment with your rules and regulations for your state. Once on to the cloud, it's a lot easier, I believe, to maintain records. Some things are still important to keep physically, like I like to have SOPs that are physical, things that you can flip through. But business records, I think, can definitely be kept on the cloud. So you just want to make sure, like I said, everything is separated and organized. Things where we have dates and years really do matter, like testing records for your products or the transportation manifest, inventory records. So if you're doing physical inventory, depending on what system you're using, ERP or your point of sale software, however you're tracking the records for counting physical inventory and matching it up with your seed to sale system, you want to make sure those records are stored away and they're separated from 2026. That way, if you're in the middle of an inspection or any kind of investigation and you're trying to do some mitigation work, it's important to have those things organized. I know in some states you can actually get fined for not getting your records over in a clean and professional manner. And as well, if you take too long, some states have requirements where you have 3 business days to get the records over to the department that's regulating you. So it's really important to have things organized. I personally think it's important if you're doing the cloud to have some kind of digital matrix or spreadsheet or table of contents that links some type of matrix that links all your documents together. So all you have to do is go to one simple document, look up the item that you're needing, and you click on the link and it takes you directly to that document. That's what I call a document matrix. Also, like I said, financials, you're going to work with your accountant, your CPA, your financial advisor, but making sure that's all separated, as well as any kind of tax records, sales tax, anything of excise and license that you're tracking for the state. If you're doing quarterly payments to your local municipality or town, just making sure all that's nice and organized. Your training and HR records, some of those would need to be separated because, for example, training records are going to have dates on when employees were trained. And if you're in a state where it's mandated that, let's say, responsible vendor training or agent training or people doing security have to be trained and have to have a certain amount of hours every year. So you want to make sure those are separated and you're just ready for that clean, fresh start in 2026. Even when 2026 gets here, and I think it's 6 or 7 days, you want to make sure you still can go back and find everything for 2025, especially over the next couple months. If there was an inspection, you're going to have to toggle between 2025 and 2026 and just keep a really good track of everything. If you're working on the cloud, or if there's any kind of platform or online system that you're using, try to create 2026 folders and then 2025, and then just keep everything organized that way. When I go into these facilities, I audit all types of facilities, cultivation, manufacturing, dispensaries. And the number one item that most operators struggle with are records. And it's not even that the owners of these facilities are struggling with records, it's the employees. And I would say there definitely are licensed operations where the owners are still working in the facility. That is 100% true. And if they're completely involved in the business and they're doing everything, they pretty much know where most of these things are. But what I run into is when I come into the facility and I'm auditing and working with the management team or staff, most of the time they have no idea where to find these records. And that experience is not only something that I experience, but regulators experience. And it's not always when the regulators are coming in to do inspections that the ownership or someone from the ownership team is always there. That is not the case. You would think so. Maybe in newer emerging markets where the owners are still fully on site and working in the business. But when you get into places like Oregon and Washington and Colorado and New Mexico and Michigan and Massachusetts, a lot of times the owners are not on site. It's employees, it's a management team or an executive level, and they might not know where everything is at. So it's really important to be organized, and you want to be able to locate all your records within under 5 minutes during an inspection. And the reason for that, and that's how I try to train people I work with, is because if you have a regulator in your facility and they're asking you for records and you're running around, you're giving them more opportunity and more time to inspect and look at things and to go deeper and start peeling back layers because you're busy trying to figure out where the heck did I put this record. And so you don't want to be in that situation. You want to be efficient. You want to give them records. You want to keep them busy. You want them doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you don't want them to be bored in your facility where now they have to start looking for things to do. So that's, I think, the worst case scenario. It really is important. Get a handle on your record keeping and then get ready for 2026. Why all this matters is mixed year records, it creates slow inspections, and you just don't want to irk the regulators, right? You don't want to get them annoyed. You don't want them to think you're unprofessional, and they're gonna put it away in their Rolodex, right, that they keep on each of these facilities. So you wanna have that good working relationship where you're being professional and you're really good at your record keeping requirements in your facility. So moving into the end of the year and the beginning of the year, we're at that cusp. And I think what's really important around this time of year, this is when we have rule changes. A lot of the work groups have been wrapping up and rulemaking sessions. Every state is different, right? You have Washington and Oregon and Colorado and Michigan. We love our rulemaking sessions and work groups, and they love changing rules and regulations and updating things. It just depends. It's really important that you understand the market that you're in and what state that you're in, and do they have rulemaking? When are the rulemaking hearings and public comments, and how do you get involved? For example, in Colorado, all of our rulemaking has wrapped up. They had a permanent rulemaking hearing, and then they just recently adopted the new set of rules. There was a lot of streamlining, which means trying to condense and take away a lot of the over redundant, repetitive use of the words over and over again to try to clean it up. So then they put out the red lines, and then you have to read through the red lines so you can understand what has changed for your license. So that's what you should be doing right now if you're in Colorado or these other states like Washington and Oregon that have some upcoming rule changes, or like in Michigan. Start reading through the red lines to understand what is changing. What's the implementation date? Like in Colorado, our implementation date is January 5th. And sometimes we have it in July as well. Typically, when it comes to packaging and labeling, is usually if there's something going on in July. But right now, we have January 5th. So people in Colorado should start looking through these red lines and creating a checklist so you understand what affects you. And there's a lot of record keeping changes in Colorado. There's some security camera changes happening. There's a lot of things that got repealed that you no longer have to do. Like I said, it's really important to get up to date and up to speed on that. So you should be preparing yourself for that transition for the implementation date in your state. That's a great way to start things off fresh. And why this matters, because nobody wants to be that person when the regulators come in and they say the implementation date was 3 months ago. Why haven't you done anything? I think in most cases they would be understanding if they came in January 6th into your facility. But when they come in and it's a month or 2 or 3, 6 months, a year later, there really are no excuses for why you're not paying attention. You are in the regulated cannabis industry. You're regulated. It is your job as an owner to make sure these things are being done or your employees are staying on top of this. You want to be proactive. Some of my clients will have me come in at this time of the year and do a third party audit so I can help them work through all the changes because they're just too busy and they can't keep up. So that's another way that you can do it. Starting fresh in 2026, this is what I like to call an operational reset. And this is feeling confident about your cannabis operation, confident in your compliance plan for 2026. And it's really important to look under the hood like you would your car and to do a full scan and see what needs to be tightened up. And this is a great time. January and February, quarter one is a great time to go in and tighten up everything and see what's going on and make sure that you're good for the upcoming quarters. So, a couple things that you can do with this operational reset is review every SOP. You want to check for any kind of material operational changes. I would say a lot of the violations out there that I see, not only with myself coming in and doing audits, but I read all the show order causes, the summary suspensions. I read all of that online. I sit there and read through them in the morning just to get an idea of what's going on in Colorado and a lot of these other states that I'm working in. What are people struggling with? Why do people get these same violations over and over again? And a lot of it too is these material changes. And a material change happens in the operation. For example, if you're a manufacturing facility and you bought a new piece of equipment and you got rid of the old equipment that, let's say, helped you create pressed pills or making chocolate bars or gummies or molds or whatever, but something changed and then you did not update your SOPs to reflect that material change in your business. And that's going to get you a ding. That's going to get you a ding when they get in there and start looking at your SOPs and then questioning what you're doing and your production facility and why things aren't aligning. Another piece is version control on these SOPs. It's probably like the one thing that everybody's really bad at for some reason. A lot of people are not really good at keeping updated version control. When was the SOP updated? The approval box. You see technically written SOPs. There's an approval box. It has the version control, the dates, the updates, all that information. And also, if you have a lot of updates, you can create a version control spreadsheet or a document that you can keep in your Google Drive and you can track all the SOP changes. But I would say a good amount of people don't even do that, which I find to be fascinating because you really will be held accountable if they go in there and find that you're not updating your SOPs regularly. Also, are you updating your SOPs for any regulatory updates? Like in Colorado, we have a lot of things that just got repealed. Are you updating your SOPs to reflect those changes? Outdated processes. Here's something that's going to get you a violation checking IDs. Let's say that an employee accepts a vertical ID and in your SOPs, it says we do not accept vertical IDs. but yet someone's telling that employee to accept vertical IDs, you're going to get yourself into some big trouble. So if you don't accept vertical IDs, that employee should not be accepting vertical IDs. And the actions of employees that they're taking in your facility should match all the steps that you outlined in your SOPs. In some cases, if you're in the middle of an investigation or in the process of getting a fine or you're going to have an administrative hearing, I read in these administrative actions, a lot of times the action that the employee took did not actually match what was in the SOP. And if you're under investigation and they're finding things, I'm telling you, they are going to look for every little thing possible. And that's when this kind of stuff matters. When we get down to the bottom of this, every little detail matters. It might not matter for a while and they're coming in on the surface, you're good, and they don't see anything and they don't dive really deep. All it takes is that one time, that one violation, that one mishap, and then they're in there and they're diving deep and they're going into everything. And it could just be a whole Pandora's box that gets opened. So, this is the time to go through everything in your business. Once you get on the other side of the holidays, this is a slower time that you can work on these things. You want to make sure that you're updating all your SOPs, versions, effective dates, and all that stuff. And why it matters is because it matters to the regulators. And if they find something and they're not happy with you, they're gonna look for every little thing they possibly can. The next piece I wanna talk about is what I call seed to sale cleanup. Not everybody's seed to sale tracking is very clean, and I'll specifically talk about Metric. That's probably the number one seed to sale system that I work with and help people with. So you want to make sure that everything is reconciled. Each state is different. You want to make sure that you're following all the rules and regulations related to your state for inventory tracking. And if you're supposed to reconcile by the end of the business day, you better make sure that you're reconciled. Do not go into 2026 without reconciling your inventory and making sure you have good inventory control. You want to make sure that your production and harvest batches, all your RFID tags, that they're closed out appropriately in the system. Obviously, if they're off getting to be tested, that's another thing. But just making sure packages are closed out and plant tags are closed out. Also, when it comes to the dispensary, I run into a lot is a lot of times we'll have things that are in the negative, and a lot of times the packages aren't zeroed out and they're just sitting there, hundreds of them. That should be something that is done and worked on every single day as products coming into your dispensary, as you're selling it, as you're moving through those package tags. That should be something that's getting reconciled and cleaned up every day. You don't want any of those negative numbers going on, and just making sure that if you are going in and doing any kind of cleanups, when you get to a certain amount, and you can always reach out to Metric for your state and find out what the threshold is. But let's just say maybe once you hit 300 grams, you might have to submit a metric ticket. It just depends what state that you're in. And when you call into metric, they want to know what state you're in. And then you want to find out at what point do I have to submit a metric ticket for this? Because let's just say you just get rid of 300 grams and just say, "Oh, it fell on the floor, got wasted, or moisture loss," or whatever the reasons. You could send off an alert on the back end that would alert regulators going, "Why did they get rid of 300 grams? Where did 300 grams go? Was it theft?" And so it just can raise some eyebrows. So you would just want to make sure you're doing those things in a clean manner and make sure you're running reports and making sure everything is clean and looking nice and shiny as you're entering into 2026. Everybody's heard this term bad data in, bad data out. It's just so true. I would say the number one violation across the entire United States is seed to sale tracking inventory control. It's data. It's people just not entering in the information correctly. People aren't slowed down. They're going really fast. There's a lot going on in these facilities. But I read violations from across the entire United States, and this is the number one violation is data entry into the seed to sale tracking system. So employee training refresh. This is a great time to make sure, like I said, look through all your employee training records, check onboarding. When was the last time all the employees took this type of training? Where's all of our mandated training, responsible vendor? Maybe it's a serve safe food handling certification. Maybe your compliance officer, they need a refresh and they need to go in and get some OSHA training or OSHA certification or some kind of safety training. You want to make sure if you're doing metric inventory, doesn't matter what license type, you should be taking the training in the metric portal at least quarterly. You should be going in there and doing a training. It's a pre-recorded webinar. It's an hour. It's not really going to kill you to spend an hour taking the training. And the reason I say this is because things change in metric all the time, and you just want to keep up to date with any changes or anything new. So you want to stay fresh and take advantage of those free metric training videos that you can get in their educational portal. Another thing, this is a great quarter one refresher for employees, refresh on SOPs. What are some areas that employees are struggling with? Where are you seeing some gaps with staff? Maybe you can do some micro learning. This is like maybe a 15-minute micro learning session with the staff before the sales day begins with them, or micro learning with the cultivation team or the production team. It doesn't always have to be these 1 hour trainings or 4 hour trainings. You can also do things in smaller increments, and that also works well, especially if you have a really busy facility. Employee handbook, it's always good to review policies and procedures with employees, remind them about things like requesting time off, which can get very challenging, especially when there's summer or holiday plans. It's always good to give a refresher for employees, especially when it comes to scheduling and requesting time off and anything around paychecks. Why this is important? Regulators, they're not gonna sit there and say, "Oh, it's okay, you trained them last year." It doesn't work like that. They want you to be training your employees. Employees, you shouldn't just onboard them and train them once and then never train them again, although I know that happens a lot in the cannabis industry. You really should have some type of engagement with employees. It should be every week, to be honest. Quarterly, it really just depends on the level of importance of the training, how often. But you should have a training plan or a training schedule in general, just a whole entire compliance schedule that manages things like audits and reviews and training and who needs this training, which can be a lot. Sometimes human resource departments will manage that depending on the size of your business. But if you're a small business, it typically falls on the manager or owner that has to manage those things. So it's just really important to be organized around training. I know employees actually appreciate getting refreshers. They do, they like it. They feel cared for, that they're important, the ownership and the owners care about the employees and that they're keeping them up to date. Those kind of things really matter in a business to take care of your employees, especially because they're the gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers of compliance. They're the last person to make that sale, the last person to package that product or do quality control before it goes to the dispensary, or the last person in that dispensary before they sell it to a customer or a patient. Another thing is you want a rule change readiness checklist. I talked about that in the beginning. It is important to have that checklist on rule changes. Whoever's doing compliance on your team, or the management, or the owner, or the attorney, maybe your company has a compliance team. every business is different on size and what they're able to do. Some people are doing everything themselves. Some people work with companies like my company. Some people have a team that does it and they don't work with third-party companies. Some companies are so small they can't afford to work with somebody like me, and they can't afford to have a team. And so they're trying to get it figured out themselves, and they're listening to podcasts like this to try to help educate them on how they can do better. Every facility out there really has so many different scenarios that makes it different, but at the end of the day, we're all operating under the umbrella of the regulated market, and we all have to follow the same rules and regulations. So you want to be ready for new rules. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I did talk about that earlier. So I kind of want to dive into a little bit about cannabis rescheduling. Actually, I wasn't really going to talk about this, but then I attended a really good webinar that was put on by Vicente, which is a law firm here in Colorado. They've been working in the cannabis industry for 15 years. They did a really good job, and I got a lot of clarity and better understanding. And this is like my takeaway, and I'm not doing a deep dive on this. So one of the things about preparing for rescheduling in 2026, like what changes and what doesn't change for tax and financial planning, what you should do at some point is you need to schedule a call with your CPA and tax advisor, and you need to have a discussion with them. And you need to have a discussion about any kind of long-term planning scenarios and any potentially restructuring that you can do in your business to set yourself up. There's no dates that have been announced yet or anything. This is all just getting organized and prepared. This is the nature of the cannabis industry. It's not if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen, which is it's right around the corner here next year. So many things can happen next year. And so you should be having these discussions with your financial advisor or your CPA in January and asking what are they doing to support their clients and cannabis operators. Are they going to be sending out emails or newsletters? Like, how are they going to be helping you as a customer stay up to date and making sure that you're doing everything that you can? And then also, too, you can talk to your attorney. I think that's really important if you have a cannabis attorney that you're working with, and if there is any restructuring that you can do in your business, and what things that you can be working on to get prepared for rescheduling in your business. I would say this is what I learned from that webinar this past week on Monday is 280E does not go away until rescheduling is fully finalized. So watch out. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So this is why you want to talk to your attorney and you want to talk to your CPA. And that 280E does not go away until the rescheduling is fully finalized, which we're nowhere near that. And that could take a whole entire year or who knows how long it could take. Honestly, everything has to be done around rescheduling. All of it has to be done before 280E will go away. And for those who don't know, or this is your first time hearing 280E, look it up, Google it online, 280E tax code. And this is where anyone who touches the plant, they get taxed at a really high rate. I believe some of it can be up to 70%. They can only write off cost of goods sold. It's really been crushing. Operators are paying millions and millions of dollars of taxes that they should not be. They can't write off things in their business like a normal business can. And it's been just crushing operators for so long. But it's not gone yet. Like I said, work with those people to help you. I will say there is a lot of misinformation going on out there on Facebook and LinkedIn about rescheduling. don't fall for the trap. Don't get worked up saying things are going to be over for patients. And there's a lot of negativity going on out there right now. And I want people to do your research, do your homework. Don't get upset or triggered by things that you're reading. Like I said, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people who don't want this, that they're against it. And there's some doom and gloom. The sky is falling going on out there right now, and do your due diligence and be responsible in where you're getting your information. A couple really good places, your attorney, the law firms, your CPA. A really good point that Vicente made is the IRS will issue guidance. So we want to watch and wait for the IRS. They're going to have to issue guidance because what if you're in the middle of an IRS case and you owe all these taxes? How does it affect you? What happens between if there were things? What if you filed late? There's so many things that could happen. So you have to wait for the IRS to issue guidance, which you're going to work with your CPA or your professional finance person. Also, CANRA. CANRA is the Cannabis Regulators Association. You can Google them, go to their website. They have a resource section. They just are putting out the facts, and they're trying to cut through the noise going on out there right now. Like I said, go to their website, go to their resource tab, and they're putting out statements and letters, and they're putting out informations and links that you can go click onto. They're keeping updated with what the White House is putting out. So I just kind of want to put that out there for people. I know rescheduling is exciting. And like I said, it's a mixed bag. We have people celebrating. We have people that are saying the sky is falling. And so it's up to you to discern and field through that information and try to find the best resources that are clean and not with an emotional charge to them. And you're just looking for the facts. Also, regulatory reality check. Cannabis still remains federally illegal. We're not. It is federally illegal, and we're still state regulated. So rescheduling does not remove any kind of state compliance obligations. Enforcement inspections will continue. Nothing's going to change. And one thing that I heard on the webinar that I actually really appreciated, and one point was brought up is, let's just say we were federally legalized. That would open up the entire market for all the big companies out there to come in and take over everything. And I know there's a lot of people like freaking out and unsettled, but because we're still federally illegal, going from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, that a lot of the big companies are not gonna come into the cannabis industry, and we're still gonna remain in that gray area. And I thought that was really something interesting that they highlighted and something to think about, is that we're still illegal at a federal level, and it does offer a little bit of protection because when we go federally legal, it's going to open up the floodgates for everyone, for every big company out there that they're not really in the industry right now, or maybe they have their toes dipped in, but because a lot of people won't come into this industry with it still being federally illegal. Something to think about. Like I said, it was a really good webinar. Enjoyed the things that they talked about, and I wanted to highlight some of the things that I thought were really good about the webinar. So operators, you don't want to get lackadaisical with compliance, or you just keep doing what we're doing in the cannabis industry, in the regulated industry, and you keep forging forward and doing your best. But not much is going to change here until they finally get it all rescheduled. We might start seeing more capital and funding coming into the industry, and mergers and acquisitions. Probably people are going to start buying up some distressed assets in all these states, and it could give a boost, elevating your operation for what's coming. So here's some things you can work on operationally. you want to be ready for OSHA. Now, OSHA's already been here. I probably have done several worker safety webinars. OSHA's been following the cannabis industry for 8 or 9 years. They have data, a database where they've been collecting information, where they've been interviewing people, where they have case studies on employees getting sick and injured. Employees have died in the cannabis industry due to accidents or cannabis dust inhalation and reacting to the cannabis dust. So OSHA has never not been in the cannabis industry. You want to start preparing for what's next. There could be a future push for completely going federally legal, which would mean federal standards, CGMP, OSHA, which is already something that you have to do right now, QMS, all the things that these manufacturing facilities do out in other regulated industries. You're going to have to start doing that now and getting ready. So, one of my suggestions is if that's something that's on your mind and matters, and you want to have that CGMP facility and start working towards getting certified and start getting your facility up there and ISO readiness for your facility. I think ISO 9001 is management systems. OSHA, you want to make sure that you're really ready to go. Every state is different when it comes to OSHA. I've always said this. If you go to California, you have Cal OSHA. When you go to Oregon, they have a really good section for cannabis facilities. In Colorado right now, OSHA's out here with a cannabis educational emphasis program for the next 5 years. They're getting all the facilities into compliance here. Michigan's another great state that has really hammered down with OSHA with cannabis operators, but that's not all states. You just want to make sure that you have the right resources. You want to get ready for OSHA. It's catching on. And they're looking at what California or Michigan or Colorado with OSHA, and they're going to start duplicating them in other states. So you want to make sure that you have these federal standards ready to go, especially on the manufacturing and cultivation side. Also, QMS standards. Quality management system is really not as complex or scary as it sounds. You're really just organizing all your systems, your document management, you have document control, corrective actions in place, internal auditing processes and training, and just tracking everything that's going on. It's really important to have some kind of QMS system. Like we look at places like Missouri, they did a wonderful job. They had got QMS written into the rules and regulations. All cannabis operators have to have QMS compliance based on what they have in their rules and regulations and what they have to do. We're seeing this happen more and more as new states come online. You'll see OSHA language or QMS language, responsible vendor training, all this information that we're seeing in the regulatory framework as more of these states are coming online. You know, what's great about QMS is it really prepares operators for any kind of multi-state expansion and also federal alignment. And one day, we're all going to witness that you can buy cannabis legally and go over state lines. It's going to happen. We're all going to witness it. Never in my lifetime did I ever thought cannabis would become legal. Never in a million years. And I never thought I would ever see the rescheduling of cannabis. So things do change, and it is important to pay attention. And how is your operation going to align and pivot with these changes? How are you going to be prepared? Because there are people right now out there preparing, and they're going to pivot, and they're not going to waste any time, and they're not going to be left behind. And they're going to be operators that get left behind because they didn't prepare. They didn't prepare, and they're not going to be able to meet the standards when the time comes. And if you think compliance is hard now, this is nothing compared to what's coming ahead in the future for regulated cannabis. It's only going to become more regulated. And then we're going to have federal standards on top of it. So it's just something you really need to think about in your business. It's not if, it's when, and you don't want to be left standing, not prepared. Getting prepared now eliminates, I've always talked about this on all my episodes, being proactive really reduces the reactiveness of you as an operator. I've seen it. It's really a beautiful thing. I know it's nerdy to say, but it's really not a mystery. If you're prepared and you're organized, you will be able to handle the curveballs that are thrown at you in your regulated cannabis business. I just really think these are some things to think about as this year is winding down. And I know there's a lot going on between with the hemp ban that recently happened in November, and now we have the rescheduling. Yeah, what does it mean? Is it really going to happen? What do I do? And you have to decide for yourself if you're new and you're coming into this industry, and especially when you're new and you're opening for the first time and you've never worked in the cannabis industry, it is like drinking from a fire hose. But you have to remember that you're making the decision to come into the regulated cannabis industry. I've been doing this for 16 years. It's never not been challenging. It's been challenging the entire time from 2009 to 2025. It's challenging in every operation I ever worked in. It's challenging in my own business. And now I'm helping clients who are operators. It's challenging for my clients. It's challenging for people in general in the cannabis industry that I'm watching and seeing things happening. And like I said, I read through these administrative action reports that I'm reading through online. I just sit here and I'm just in shock because sometimes I just don't understand why people spend millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars and get investors or get money from family members, and you're self-funded or you're not. And then you don't put the money into compliance. And I'm reading something this morning for a $40,000 violation in metric violations. $40,000 in metric violations. There was like over 30 violations that I read through this morning. Sometimes I can't comprehend why an operator would work so hard for so long and then that happens. That kind of nonsense, that's going to be gone with federal legalization. People like that will be squashed and they'll be put out of business instantly. You have to pivot to be federally compliant. That is coming. Now, with the rescheduling, it's coming and you can start getting ready now. And so these are the things like I just want operators and new people to think about if you're existing. What are the things you can do to tighten up? And the state regulatory agencies, they're preparing as well because obviously it affects the rules and regulations and enforcement and how things are going to be done. So it's going to be a very interesting year in 2026 for cannabis operators. But like I said, specifically, certain things do not change. And everyone should just be focusing on making sure they're compliant with the state. And for those who want to get ready for federal standards, start preparing. Work with a company to help you with getting CGMP compliant, OSHA readiness, making sure you have good worker safety and safety programs, OSHA and worker safety and worker protection standards. These are things operators should be doing today in 2025. Whether it got rescheduled or not, you should be doing those things, period. Just really setting yourself up for success for next year and really making it a year to where when things come your way, you can handle it. You can pivot, you can adapt, and do the things that you need to do in your cannabis operation. Hopefully, this was a really helpful episode. I wanted to do one that focused on winding down and what people could work on for next year, and also talk a little bit about rescheduling. It's a great time of the year to clean things up, just like spring cleaning, getting ready. Every quarter should be spring cleaning in your business. whether it's with somebody who helps come in and does audits or metric cleans or your CPA or financial advisor and being proactive. I want to thank all my listeners. This is my last episode of 2025 of season 1 is now going to be officially over. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday and a really happy new year. This episode will not air until December 31st. Christmas will already be over for those who celebrate Christmas or the holidays. And for those who are listening from other countries, you may not celebrate these holidays, but thanks for tuning in. It's been a wonderful 2025. I really do appreciate everyone who has been supporting Under the Microscope with Jenny. This was something I dreamed about doing 5 years ago. It took me until 2025 basically to launch it and to get the courage up to do this. I would like everyone to know on January 7th will be our kickoff to season 2 of Under the Microscope with Jenny, and I have a wonderful guest, so please be on the lookout. For those who would like to stream this podcast, it is available on Apple and Spotify and wherever you like to listen. I feel this podcast is extremely syndicated. I think it's syndicated on up to 10 different platforms is what I'm finding out. Also, if you could go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, it's at Under the Microscope with Jenny. That would be wonderful if I could get some help growing my YouTube channel and get more people checking out the podcast. Thank you, everyone. A happy new year and wonderful blessings for everyone in 2026. Thank you.